the swift savior, the sainted speedster. This is Gauss, the speed Warframe. Gauss is the fastest frame in the game as of the making of this video. He is perfect for anyone who loves speedsters. Gauss's passive gives him his kinetic battery. This battery charges with some effects and depletes with others, depending on the ability. The battery increases as he moves or revives players, and lowers while in nullifier bubbles or falling out of bounds. The battery's charge also gives Gauss increased recharge rates and lower delays on his shield recharge. Up to 120% increased recharge rate and 80% recharge delay. This makes it a lot faster for Gauss to regen his shields when out of combat, making it a lot easier for him to tank hits. Hitting a full sprint, Mach Rush does exactly what you think it does. Tapping the button will cause Gauss to dash forwards, knocking down enemies and dealing impact damage. Holding the ability button, however, will cause Gauss to sprint for as long as it's held down, or you're holding down the movement key. While in a full sprint, Gauss knocks over any enemies that he passes by. The longer Gauss runs, and more enemies he knocks down with Mach Rush, the more the battery fills, making it a very useful way to quickly build some charge. Along with this, the higher Gauss's base sprint speed, the faster he moves while in Mach Rush. This lets you get to insane speeds, especially when paired with frames like Volt that increase movement speed. Mach Rush is an ability that makes Gauss Gauss. He can run across water, outpace capture targets, and all around makes Warframe a better Flash game than DC could ever make. It should be noted, however, that while moving at this increased speed, Gauss turns much slower, as he can't take the sharp angles most frames can. Kinetic plating makes Gauss immune to cold, heat, blast, stagger, and knockdown statuses. Gauss will convert a portion of damage taken from cold, heat, blast, and physical damage into sources of energy. Since almost all sources of damage deals at least physical damage in some way, this means Gauss can have a near constant source of energy as long as he gets hit now and then. Kinetic plating additionally gives Gauss increased damage reduction based on the amount of battery charge. Charge is drained for every second kinetic plating is active, and for each hit taken by Gauss. However, melee strikes will recharge it. Using Mach Rush while kinetic plating is active will also deal slash damage with a guaranteed status effect. As long as Gauss is smart with it and pays attention, kinetic plating can be active at all times. Pairing it up with Mach Rush, for instance, makes it so you're constantly building your charge on your battery, making the drain from kinetic plating essentially null and void so long as you use Mach Rush every now and then. Especially since, again, kinetic plating builds up energy. This is a very good survival ability, making Gauss a very effective tank sometimes. Using the full force of kinetic energy, Thermal Sunder is a simple and complicated ability. Holding the ability button will create a circle of flame around Gauss, dealing heat damage over time in that spot to enemies that enter that area, while draining the battery. Tapping will create an area of cold, dealing cold damage over time and charging the battery. The areas created by Thermal Sunder shrink over time before dissipating, but can be replaced at any time. Multiple instances of Thermal Sunder can be active at once, allowing Gauss to either create a long area of damage in hulls, or create multiple instances on one spot for focused damage. However, casting the two types in the same spot will create a new effect. The original status will be removed and replaced with a blast proc. Enemies in this area will take blast damage instead of cold or heat. If cold is cast, then fire, enemies will be knocked down away from Gauss. However, if the inverse is true, heat being cast first will pull them towards Gauss. This can either make it easier for Gauss to free him up some space, or pull enemies in for close range attacks. Running through the area of Thermal Sunder with Mach Rush will add its damage type to the damage dealt by Mach Rush. Thermal Sunder is a very useful ability for damage, and its cold area can help make enemies easier to take care of for Gauss and his team, since it slows them down so much. Pushing himself beyond his limits, Redline overcharges Gauss's battery above the line. While active, Gauss increases his fire rate, melee speed, reload speed, and casting speed based on his battery. Redline will drain the battery by 2% every second. However, it can be manually deactivated. Gauss will periodically release electricity from himself while running, which weirdly does impact damage primarily, with some puncture damage. I would have expected it to do, electric damage, but whatever. While active, Mach Rush costs half as much energy, and Kinetic Plating will give increased melee damage and stagger chance on melee hits. Thermal Sunder's damage types also gain additional effects. Cold will freeze enemies solid, while Heat will deal full damage over time, and Blast will permanently strip armor from enemies. As long as Kinetic Plating and Mach Rush are in use, Gauss should be able to keep Redline active almost all the time. Gauss's energy reduction, massive amounts of speed, tanking capabilities, and damage abilities make him an extremely effective Warframe for a lot of playstyles, especially if you like high-paced gameplay. At rank 30, Gauss has 370 HP, 555 shields, 185 armor, and 225 energy. He has a Nerimon Aura slot, along with 1 Matter Eye and 1 Vazarin Polarity. Gauss Prime has an additional 95 shields and an extra Nerimon Polarity. Gauss's blueprint can be purchased from the market, with his parts being awarded from the Kappa Sedna Disruption mission from Tier C reward pools. For a good early game build for Gauss, my recommendation is first putting on Redirection, since he's got such high shields already, and he focuses primarily on recharging shields. Range and duration are really good for Gauss, no matter what ability we're talking about. Because the area of the explosion when he crashes into objects on Mach Rush is enhanced. Redline's arcing damage has increased range. Thermal Sunder, a lot of people's builds really like having massive zones for Thermal Sunder. So it's always nice to have that, because you can fill almost an entire room very easily by adding a little bit of range for Thermal Sunder. And duration affects all but Mach Rush when it comes to his abilities, which is always a good thing to have. As always, Intensify for ability strength. I don't think anyone's going to ever complain about you having any ability strength on a build. There's very few times you're going to not want ability strength. You're going to get very annoyed hearing me say add ability strength, but you always want it. Streamline for increased efficiency is very nice because you can place down a lot more Thermal Sunders like that, or use Mach Rush for a lot longer. Although, if you want to replace it with something, you're perfectly fine to do so, since kinetic plating regenerates your energy already. But I do like having Streamline for that little bit of added safety net. For the remaining 7 capacity, I have Fast Deflection, which increases your shield recharge rate and makes you able to recharge shields much faster, which, pairing that up with his kinetic battery, can make you recharge your shields incredibly quickly, while also having them recharge a lot sooner than you normally would. However, if you want to replace any of these mods, you could always replace Streamline with something, or take off both Streamline and Fast Deflection and replace it for another mod such as Vigor, which increases shield capacity and health. But this is a pretty decent overall early game build for him, utilizing the base mod capacities. Now let's see Gauss in action one last time. On your mark, Tenno. Rush them.